I'm very happy to be here to present a lecture, an updated version of a lecture that I actually already presented at the annual meeting of ERC National in 2023. That paper, also thanks to the encouragement of Barbara, who was very enthusiastic about, became a short article in Scribe, fall 2023. So, or if you, I can send you the PDF of it. Today, indeed, I will share more news about teaching Egyptology at San Quentin, since I was able to offer again the course of Egyptology last fall, and there are some interesting updates. I continue to write and research about higher education in prison, and this became actually a new project for me that is indeed entitled Teaching Maat in Prison, and I will explain you also why I chose this title. I have a few nice old photos of the prison, but so indeed, it's not called anymore State Prison, it's now a rehabilitation center. So I'll tell you also about that. But San Quentin State Prison is the oldest prison in California. Was built in 1852 in the San Francisco Bay to replace actually a ship that served as California's first official prison. So this is an old pictures of San Quentin. It has been for long notoriously known as an infamous place where some famous criminals have been incarcerated in the past, especially in the 50s. There are a lot of stories about the prison, and also where the use of torture as interrogation technique was banned only in 1944. And on top of that, San Quentin has been the largest male death row getting the largest male death row population in the United States. In 1969, it was also here that country music legend Johnny Cash sang to the crowds of incarcerated men, "San Quentin, you've been a living hell to me." So this is the dining room, Chow Hall, in a photo from 1940. It's still actually the dining room today. Only it's been embellished with the California state murals by Alfredo Santos, who has been working on this amazing piece of art. If you have a chance, there are actually visits available to the prison, and the old mural is 100-foot long murals that tell you the history of California. And so it looks like that he worked at night for more than 2 years, aided by 2 inmates and overseen by a single guard. And when Santos finished, the warden thanked him for dressing up the old dining room. He was then paroled after serving 4 years and returned to South California and San Diego, opened even a gallery, and embarked in a long career as a fine artist, and then passed away.
Was that while he did this?
Yeah, he painted that while he was in prison. It's really stunning. I think this should be actually a museum, in fact, because it's. I encourage you to, if you want information, I can give you information about those guided visits, and they will show you the murals. Okay, this has nothing to do with Egyptology, but I'll get there. I have a few more cards from the 50s that I found also through colleagues. I always wonder who is sending cards from prison. In fact, when you arrive at San Quentin, there is a souvenir shop outside. It's closed now, but maybe relatives of incarcerated people or the incarcerated people themselves could use this service. And so you see here the courtyard, view also from the beautiful coast nearby, and this I always thought it's such a pity that people inside don't have windows to the outside, so they never see such a beautiful view. While I know about other prisons, especially in Italy, where you have a view at least of the outside of the coast, especially Naples. This is another old pictures from also the inside when you enter this monumental entrance, which is also, it's all an historical building. And still from the 50s, photos from North Block. The cells are still the same today. And more recently, a photo of the courtyard and this building on the right. Do you see my? Oh, okay, no, I have to use where it was here. So this building is the educational building where I and other volunteers teach. And this is a picture when the warriors actually every year come to San Quentin. San Quentin also has a basketball team called the San Quentin Warriors. And here I'm with Professor Bill Drummond, who is here in the audience, and whom I have to thank because actually he's been one of my mentors to start teaching in prison. And so he was able to get me in during the game, and you may recognize here Clay Thompson and Chris Paul that weren't really involved into basketball that day, but mostly in chess, in playing chess. And again, thank you to Bill Drummond for all the mentorship. And in fact, if you would be interested in knowing more also about prison journalism, Professor Drummond is professor at the School of Journalism here at UC Berkeley, and he wrote a book, Prison Truth, on San Quentin News, which is the newspaper made by the incarcerated people and journalists inside San Quentin. And also Professor Drummond has actually a course on prison journalism and brings regularly UC Berkeley students, undergraduates and graduates inside San Quentin. And this, I think, is something really great that eventually I would like to be able to do as well. Right now, I have my graduate students helping as TAs. I'll return on that in a bit. But it will be really great to also be able to expose students to a different reality in higher education. In fact, San Quentin is already offering a number of educational and rehabilitation programs for its incarcerated population. In 2021, I was given the opportunity indeed to start teaching, but it is in 2022 when Governor Newsom announced the dismantling of the death row in the prison and the project to basically create a positive and healing environment. I'm quoting according to what we could see as a sort of Scandinavian the model of a Scandinavian center for rehabilitation. And so he put together actually a multidisciplinary group, including people from many background disciplines to think, to have a new vision about San Quentin. Among these people were also Jody Lewen, who is the president of the Mount Tamalpais College program, and to whom I'm also grateful indeed, because thanks to her vision and thanks to the staff of Mount Tamalpais College, I could include Egyptology in the course catalog. When I arrived in 2021, in fact, the course catalog had not much about ancient history. And so basically this is a course catalog for what Barbara already mentioned, the Associate of Arts degree in Liberal Arts, which is a multidisciplinary education that offers introductory courses in the humanities, social science, maths, and science. And to earn the AA degree, students must complete 61 semester units, so 20 classes across a range of subjects. And most courses are introductory and lower division, are transferable to four-year institutions if the students are paroled, and the college serves right now about 300 students, which is a small portion of the over 3,000 inmates housed at San Quentin, but the enrollment is capped around 300 because of the limited classroom space, although now there is a project of renewing and actually building a new educational building that could get more students. And so, as you can see here, for the history courses, the course catalog when I arrived already included courses on world history, history of California, history of the American government, and the like. So the focus for history courses has been mainly modern. For ancient history, there were two elective, history 2026, ancient African history, and 2027, ancient world history. But none of those courses involved the study of ancient Egypt. And so again, thanks to MTC's wonderful staff and board, in fall 2021, my course on the history and art of ancient Egypt, called at the time History 280, was introduced in the humanities curriculum. And as far as I know, this has been the first time in the US that Egyptology entered the prison and was presented to incarcerated students. I designed the course similarly to an introduction course of Egyptology for undergraduate students. I used Salima Ikram's Introduction to Ancient Egypt as main textbook, but also provide various articles in a reader. And you can see here on the screen some titles of studies included in the syllabus of 2021, which introduce basic issues about ancient Egyptian history, history of reception, art, literature, and also Nubian studies. Nubian studies was indeed a favorite topic for a classroom that, especially in 2021, was mainly composed by African American students who were very much interested in the African heritage. We also read some extracts from Karakuni's book on Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut is always sparks a lot of interest. And we discuss widely the role of women in ancient Egypt. And so I also have to thank Kara, of course, for donating 20 copies of it for our library. There is also a small library in our program. And by the way, I brought also instead the syllabus I use in fall 2024, just with different articles. So maybe you want to pass it around, Barbara, and just to have a look on the selection. So as for most of the courses of the MTC program, History 280 could be supported by TA, and I was lucky to have the first time my own PhD students, now ex-PhD students, Kia Johnston, tutoring the students, guiding them through the weekly assignments, which consisted in writing 1 or 2 paragraphs commenting on the reading of the week and answering prompts. And here you see an example of those from week 10 of the course. For the class introducing the ancient Egyptian written culture, the prompt was, imagine to be an ancient Egyptian scribe. How would you use your skills? What kind of text would you like to write? Why? Or when talking about ancient Egyptian daily life, how do you think the geography and environment of a land influences its culture, society, and religion? I designed the prompts in a way that could stimulate the students' imagination about how those ancient people lived and felt the world around them and how they produced knowledge. These prompts and in general the long class discussions were meant also to let them compare their own lived experience with the life experience of people living in a different time and society. What I and my TA were not expecting is how deep the ancient Egyptian art, material culture and text would resonate among incarcerated students, and how easily they could relate to the study material we were exposing them to, and for many of them this was the first time. And by the way, the student you see in this photo, also one of my best students, is Greg Eskridge, who paroled last year. Unfortunately, could not be here. He's in Santa Cruz. Lucky him today. It's nice weather. And but he's also a journalist involved in prison podcast productions. So you can Google him and find his podcast Uncuffed online. And I was able to write also a recommendation letter to the parole board to advocate for his freedom, as I did for other students. And I must say I never felt so useful as when I can help these guys to get a second chance to live outside bars and to regain their freedoms. In fact, Greg and many of my students have been incarcerated for over 30 years. When thinking back to the first time I've been teaching Egyptology at San Quentin, I remember how the COVID restrictions there have been in place longer than outside, with mandatory masks in class still in 2021, and the enrollment capped at 15. My course reached maximum enrollment right away. 11 out of 15 students were people of colors, and that's also because people of colors are also the highest percentage of inmates in the US and in California, especially in male prisons. Especially black men indeed comprise about 30% of the US population, but 35% of those incarcerated. And even if California, despite as a reputation as a progressive state, is actually one of the epicenters of mass incarceration in the United States, incarcerating more people than any other state except Texas. And so the implication of teaching a class of many people of colors and other minorities, also from South America, is also, it has to do with the fact that Egypt, their idea of ancient Egypt is not always real. Sometimes it's more imagined through what they read, what they are exposed to, also through the media, and especially for African Americans, it was very interesting to discuss with students how ancient Egypt indeed is connected to their roots, and how much inspiration indeed ancient Egypt is for them. And so the real and or imagined world of the pharaoh has been revisited, in fact, also outside prison in Black America through a series of important philosophical, political, literary and artistic movements that have shaped the life of African Americans. This is another project of mine having to do especially with Afrofuturism, and if you're interested, there is a lecture actually on our YouTube channel of our chapter about that. And so what I found among the black incarcerated students of my course is also a multifaceted history of reception of ancient Egypt, its social history, arts and religion that had roots within the African American communities, from the civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter protest. And that shows how ideals of black power and of racial justice have been closely connected to the claim of ancient Egypt being part of black heritage. Most of the students are also believers, mainly Christians or Muslims, especially among the Christian students. I could see that they knew their Bible very well. And then so there were a lot of discussions about the Exodus. I had really to, and here you can see, I don't know if you can read, but was, I'm even last semester, I'm getting from them a free research about Exodus and ancient Egypt. And so, as I outline also in various studies, I was reading this wonderful book, Rewriting Exodus. The books of Exodus is a powerful narrative of liberation that has been a central imaginative touchstone in the Black American struggle against US racism, and at the center of the writings of Black thinkers as a fighting allegory for the painful experience of exile and the African diaspora. And so in these narratives, Pharaoh can alternatively be seen as the tyrant who enslaved the Israelites, or as the glorious royal ancestor of their original lost civilization. And so Martin Luther King said in one of his speech, I'm quoting from the also what you see on the screen, whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had the favorite formula for doing it. He kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But whenever the slaves get together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. And I'm quoting this passage since this was also part of the perception of ancient Egypt in the classroom, and not just among Black students, but also in the non-Black minority of the students. Last fall, one of the final projects was about Egypt and Africa. Robert is an African-American student deeply engaged in studying his own heritage as descendant of people from the Black diaspora, and this is one page of his final essay, which you can read yourself. And as you can see, this was printed and accompanied also by a PowerPoint. And so what is new now in San Quentin is that each student can use a laptop, not connected to internet though. Also, instructors can use laptops, and this is a huge improvement since in 2021 I could only use a blackboard and textbooks. And so you can see an example how in the essay there is always some reference to their own experience, to their own family history. My family has always talked with pride about our kinship with the Egyptian people, and so on. And during this lecture, indeed, I would like to share with you some testimonies about the teaching in prison or learning in prison. And I think the feedback of my dentiste is Kia Johnston, that you all know very well, because she's also the secretary of our chapter. And this is a feedback on her experience which she kindly offered to share for us. Is a powerful and explicative example of this kind of conversations we have been having in class back in 2021. I read it for you in case it's not clear on the wall. Teaching about ancient Egypt at San Quentin was both eye-opening and rewarding. When I volunteered to be Rita Lucarelli's teaching assistant, I was close to graduating with my doctorate. I volunteered because I felt that I live in a little bit of an enclave at Berkeley, and I felt that I wasn't really contributing to making my community a better place, and this was a good opportunity to do it. It was also outside of my comfort zone. My job involved substituting for Rita and also leading a weekly study hall where students would come in to talk, work on homework, or to ask questions. I had never worked in a prison before. I didn't know what to expect. Teaching students at San Quentin was much different than teaching undergraduates. While I usually have to tease questions out of my undergraduates, the students at San Quentin were very interested in learning, did the assigned reading, and almost always had questions and comments. Many of the questions related the material to their own experience. These connections were sometimes surprising to me, but also really caused me to think. For example, in a discussion on the economy of ancient Egypt, I mentioned that most farmers didn't own the land they worked, which instead belonged to the state of the temple. Farmers paid a large percentage of their crops upward through a series of middlemen, with most of the produce ending up with the temple or state and being redistributed to priests and administrators. One of my students exclaimed, "That's sharecropping. We know all about sharecropping." Several others in the class chuckled. This is a connection I had never made, but it was one that was obvious to my mostly black students. When reflecting on this remark and also on what the students told me about working for petty change in the prison industries workshop, it was one of the several moments I had that I had in that class where the recent and ancient past both seemed uncomfortably close to the present. This sense of closeness to the past can be disturbing, but also comforting. Several of my students were artists who work Egyptian themes into their art. These students find a sense of identity in the idea that ancient Egypt was a great African culture, when generations of Black Americans have been told that there were no great African cultures. Other students were looking for a connection between ancient Egypt and their religious beliefs. I had to tread somewhat carefully in discussions of the historicity of the history of Exodus. To my knowledge, there is no evidence of a historical Moses or a dramatic escape across the Red Sea. There are narratives of small numbers of enslaved people who escaped the Egyptians. I tried to be honest about the scope of our knowledge in a way that was respectful to a faith that plays an important part in the lives of the students who were asking the questions. Some students got more immediate benefit from the class. I had one student who would come to study hall and sleep. He told me his new cellmate was mentally unstable and that he didn't go to sleep at night until he heard the other guy snoring because he was afraid he might get stabbed. Even if knowing about ancient Egypt didn't add anything permanent to the lives of my students, the ability to come to class, to be mentally stimulated, to talk, and to feel temporarily safe certainly did. To me, being able to make a small difference in the lives of my students was the bottom line that made the class worth it. Thank you, Kia, if you watched the recording. I decided to call this paper and this project Teaching Maat, referring to the main ancient Egyptian idea of what is right and what is personified by a beautiful winged goddess. Because in fact the study of ancient Egyptian religion and ethics and the way they influenced the reception of this ancient culture among my incarcerated students is what has made my experience about teaching Egyptology in prison really unique. The challenge within this cultural setting and while dealing with reception has been to be able to present a rigorous academic view of ancient Egypt, its culture and society, to a student population whose personal experience in prison as well as the memory of their life outside the carceral space makes most of the teaching material very sensitive, especially when dealing with religious beliefs, ethics, wisdom literature, the ideas of Maat himself, what is right versus punishment in this and the other world. Ancient Egyptian religion, the way it shaped the Egyptian worldview and daily life, the conception of the divine and the beliefs in life after death on earth have been the topics that students want to discuss the most. I do not think I ever spent so much time in any other course at UC Berkeley on the scene of the final judgment, you see here, of the Book of the Dead, as I did in my San Quentin class of Egyptology. The student wished to know every detail of this scene and carefully attempt an interpretation of the full text of spell 125 of the Book of the Dead and its so-called negative confession, where the deceased has to say that he did not commit any sin in front of Osiris. And this title, Jailhouse Osiris, was inspired by another project we were putting together with Professor Drummond about studying religion in San Quentin, and we wanted to title, if you remember, Bill, Jailhouse Jesus. One of the students even told me that he hanged the color picture from the Papyrus of Ani, so this one from the judgment of the Papyrus of Ani, which I distributed in class. He hung it in his cell as a reminder that justice will be established eventually. Indeed, many of the students are lifers, hoping to be paroled, not always happening, and even invited me to go visit his decorated cell walls. Of course, I could not do that. I appreciated the invitation. This year's students' cohort has been especially impressive in their reflections about Maat, and I'm going to publish more about it. I'm actually collecting essays and work on those. I believe that Maat keeps being a deeply important concept in today's society and outside prison. It shapes interrelationships between people and states, and for all those who feel the weight of justice and of injustice on their life daily, behind bars or in an occupied land or as war victims. Below is this is on the slide is a short but pregnant answer of one of my students last semester to the prompt, what do you think is the most fascinating aspect of the ancient Egyptian religion? And as you can read yourself, is about Maat, but Maat being seen as balance, not just truth. And this was really resonating in me, considering that indeed not just truth, but balance is what we all seek in life, in the end also outside prison. And so I was touched by its conclusion. I hope that such balance can find its way into our lives. The first time I've been teaching about ancient Egypt at San Quentin, I was also concerned that they would overinterpret the sources, transform Egyptology in a religious teaching. So after a few classes and a lot of discussions about the ancient Egyptian religion, I was reassured that they were more interested to learn about my view of ancient Egypt and had actually truly fun challenging their own views. They were listening, reading, making questions in order to learn, and not for finding confirmation of their own ideas about what justice on earth and in the netherworld means in the ancient Egyptian worldview. I had to make sure they understood the difference between primary and secondary sources, and so that Badge, the translation of Book of the Dead, is a secondary source. It's not the Book of the Dead of Badge. You can see here my corrections, right? So it's a translation. And also, here you see the responses about becoming an Egyptology. What kind of sources methodology will you use? And so I say I will learn. The students would like to focus on text, so Badge. And it was nice that he said, I'm very intrigued about Egyptian text and history, and I pray that I can be introduced to a new world of thought by my new Egyptian, will be me, instructor. So. The incarcerated population is also plenty of amazing artists, and prison art is finally being recognized also in public spaces. For instance, in the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco, where a virtual exhibition of prison art, including the work of some of my students, was hosted already in 2020. Egypt has been greatly represented, and here I'd like to mention Stan Bay. Oh, sorry. Stan Bay, who did not enroll in my Egyptology course, but with whom I'd always had very engaging conversations about ancient Egypt while I was helping in the prison new computer lab this year. So we have a computer lab, and Stan Bay is also a techie, actually. Especially I like this beautiful vulture, clearly inspired from ancient Egypt, as well as this Nefertiti-inspired painting entitled Ancient Mother's Tears. And you can basically buy prison's art, and I'm really glad that today actually we have one of the artists here, Gerald Morgan, who also use a lot of Egypt in his art. He was one of my first brilliant students. He was able, I remember Gerald, that he basically complete all the assignments of the whole semester in the first few weeks. So, you know, it was like, so then I'm free. And I don't know, Gerald, if you want to say a few words, I could, I know that maybe I'll come there, since this, I know your back was hurting, so I don't want you to move too much. If you want to say a few words.
Oh, this is a microphone.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, unlike when Johnny Cash was at San Quentin, it changed a lot. When I arrived, I was doing a 40-year tour. I wound up doing 25, but in 1915, I arrived at San Quentin. And due to their education program, I had asked to be transferred to San Quentin. And it was unique compared to the other campuses. I mean, the teachers were real and dedicated to actually learning, you know, putting people back on their academic trail. I had originally went to college at Sacramento State and Cal Poly Pomona, and quit eventually so I can start working and start a family. So when I heard about San Quentin, I immediately transferred there and got involved in their education program. And years into it, I was basically had my AA and I was moving on. I heard that they had an Egyptian class. And that always interested me because I always felt like it was a society, a culture that I always wanted to know more about it. And when I found out who was teaching it, that she was the real deal and actually was involved in digs and going into tombs and everything, I said, well, I'm definitely going to take this class. And it was something that I was really, really happy about because she went beyond what I had expected. And it looked like every time I went into the class, I wanted more. I wanted more. Like she said, I speeded up, did almost all the curriculum that was necessary for that class, but I was still absorbing more like a sponge. And with Rita, she just never let me down. I started adding things like that to my painting, and it was a class with, like, if nobody ever been to prison before, you would know the difference. This did not feel like prison. I spent more time in class than most people spend on the yard when they was out there playing basketball and tennis and, you know, just basically just killing time. I would be in class and trying to absorb more knowledge. And like I said, Rita was a real deal. And any questions I came up with, she would answer them. And I even started signing my name in what is it? Hieroglyph. I started signing my name on some of my paintings with that. So I don't want to steal the stage, but
thank you. And I'm not paying, girl. This is really like, thank you. I mean, for all these nice words. And indeed, I had another slide with Gerald, because indeed he's one of the students who've been paroled, and I was so happy to meet him outside. This is in Tilburon in Marine, when there was a prison art event, and Gerald indeed was on stage with another great speech. Other artists also been in my course, La Mavis Shorty, so-called Comundo Villa, You can see some of his art. This is the Feminine Yakuba 2042, which has been seen by critics as a work of Afrofuturism, and Yamani Candice that depicted a fierce and warrior-like queen of Nubia. And indeed, as I say, there was a lot of interest, especially in Nubia, while teaching. And so last fall, 2023, with my immense satisfaction due to the success and the very positive student evaluations of my course, History of Ancient Egypt became a catalog course with an catalog number 2023 as an elective, which means I can now regularly offer it every other year or so. And with the advent of technology, as I said, we can use PowerPoints, and so I could enrich the syllabus and teaching material with many more visuals. And this has been great because the students really love to see videos, photos of my trips to Egypt, excavations report, even since I work with 3D visualizations, 3D models of coffins. It's been really great. I talk a lot also about the Hearst Museum, the collection we have here. The students were making a lot of jokes about organizing a field trip. Who knows, maybe in the future one day will be possible. And indeed, maybe some of you know my project, The Book of the Dead in 3D. So I was showing those coffins, and one student's last project has been his choice was on the sarcophagus of Psamtek. The doctor has been the one I've been working a lot, and that you can see at the entrance of the Hearst Museum. And so this was the end of his essay, which I find really great. As I find this individual sarcophagus of Psamtek quite striking, to say the least. Its protruding figure and polished dark shade give it a modern element. It will not look out of place in a contemporary household. I think it is beautiful. In closing, I would like to convey my deep respect for this ancient civilization. Without these people, we may not enjoy some of the technologies that we have today. I hope that with my minimal knowledge, I was able to forward all the respect that this culture deserves. Thank you, Rita and Beatrice, for sharing your knowledge and passion for all these illustrious people. And I'm quoting that because I hope that with these quotations indeed can transfer to you the great sense of appreciations of the students, as well as Gerald's words. So it's appreciations not only towards the instructors, but also about the ancient world that they try to grasp. For most of them, this is the first approach to ancient Egypt, not having had access to this study before being incarcerated. And Beatrice mentioned here is actually my current PhD student, Beatrice De Faveri, who has been helping last fall as TA. And I know that Beatrice has some notes. You want to maybe come here also to share quickly your experience? I hope I'm not out of time.
No,
almost done.
Okay. I'll be brief. Thank you, Rita, for this opportunity to share my experience too. Yeah, I was immediately interested when Professor Lucarelli sent out an email asking graduate students if they would consider acting as their TA for the History of Ancient Egypt class at San Quentin. And as soon as I started evaluating this, if this would have been suitable for me, or even if I was comfortable doing such an experience, I was undeniably drawn to the idea of it, and I think eventually it took me just a couple of days to volunteer. So needless to say, I was, of course, a bit intimidated by the experience, mostly by the novelty of the experience at first. But I knew very well how long Professor Lucarelli had been engaging with the incarcerated community of San Quentin, so really concerns over safety, all these things never really touched me, never really were a concern of mine. And my main concern was I want to signal to my students that I am safe, meaning that I genuinely want them to enjoy coming to class, genuinely want to share my experience, and most of all to, let's say, communicate to them that they were first and foremost students to me before being incarcerated people, and only incidentally people who happen to be incarcerated. But the fact is they will remind you. You might think that it's like walking on eggshells, and it can be, because of course you want to be mindful of the environment, and most of all you want to be respectful. But I remember this one time, a guard, as I was teaching, a guard from outside yelled very loudly, very fast, so I got startled. And as I say in Italian sometimes, usually when I get startled, I say something to the effect of, Jesus, that like it took 10 years off my life. And of course, like one of them was very quick to reply, like, yep, know something about it. So they will joke about it, and of course, make you at ease. They will crack jokes. But yeah, so of course, no amount of academic training really prepares you to deliver a class to incarcerated people. So it's something you want to be willing to do. And indeed, they were full of surprises, especially the diligence students, honestly. And their appetite for knowledge was something that I was not expecting at all. And it left me speechless from day one. Actually, find myself wishing that my own students at UC Berkeley were as interested in what I had to say. I'm not even kidding here, and they're excited, to and ask so many pertinent questions. Most of these students are really brilliant. I mean, all of my students were brilliant, so asking really, really good questions. Something that I treasure about this experience is that any instructor at San Quentin must remember that these students come from a wide variety of educational backgrounds. And that was priceless for me because it's a reminder that higher education, and really any form of education, is in fact a privilege. And as academics, we tend to forget this basic truth that I think is really should be kept in mind at all times. So to me, it is really special that these people finally had the opportunity to learn, new and old interests. And thanks to the program, and it did engender a very special sense of fulfillment for me to be able to participate in the learning and seeing students really treasuring the experience. And it truly felt like an honor. So I'm very grateful to Professor Lucarelli for giving me the opportunity to engage in this. And it's been a teachable moment for me on the academic level, of course, but mostly on the human side, I would say. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. And in fact, as I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, I'm really trying to involve more my own students in this with this course. I hope that same as Beatrice and Kia, other graduate students will be able to help me as TAs or even as co-instructors. In fact, there are many of the volunteers of Mount Tamalpais College are UC Berkeley graduate students from Maat, computer science, English. There weren't Egyptologists before, but now we start a new group of Egyptologists at San Quentin. And I'd like to share these photos. This was the graduation of 2021, so still this was the 2021 cohort with some of the students as well. Despite, and I like these photos still all masked because really during COVID it has been horrible. At San Quentin, many lives were lost, and those students they really reached something with graduation despite having to learn through prison quarantines. There were a lot of interruptions, no possibility to use any outside resource, no internet. Sometimes we had to communicate per correspondence. But here you can really see them proud of something they achieved through real work and dedication. And so what is the lesson we can learn from it while discussing here about higher education in prison, Egyptology in prison. How does the ancient past create meaning for the present of incarcerated people in the US and abroad? I like to let hear some of the alumni of the Mount Tamalpais College program to speak for me. These are from the website of the program. Emile De Weaver, who is now a Black community organizer, literary writer and journalist, who co-founded Prison Renaissance while serving 67 years to life sentence in prison. His sentence was then commuted in 2017 for his community service and productivity, and his story of transformation after graduating through the program. So he said, if I can teach generations to write with the consciousness that their work can heal our world, and they teach generations after them, the legacy continues. Hedy Arena was the staff photographer for the only for the San Quentin News, which is the only Maat-run newspaper in California, who wrote for the website, "Liberal arts education is a window into the beauty, struggle, and cruelty of humanity." Of humanity's will to endure. Through it, we can strive to be and do better. We can learn what it means to uphold and respect the beliefs of others, no matter how different or contrary they are to our own. And finally, Ruben Ramirez, what I cherish the most is the enlightenment that I've received through education and programs that allowed me to be a better person in my relationships with others. These words bring us back to the ancient Egyptian wisdom literature and the praises of knowledge and education that one can read, for instance, in the instructions of Ani, famous piece of ancient Egyptian wisdom literature. One will do all you say if you are versed in writings. Study the writings, put them in your heart. Then all your words will be effective. Whatever office a scribe is given, he should consult the writings. Egyptology, with its incredibly various and fascinating primary sources, cultural entanglements and changes through the millennia that one needs to understand while consuming centuries of scholarship covering so many subdisciplines, from archaeology to philology, through anthropology and science, is definitely a field that can be renewed if taught in a prison environment, especially today when we are continuously discussing how to rebrand, diversify, and decolonize a discipline that, together with Greek and Roman studies, has been used for centuries to support colonialist projects. It is not the case that classics, so-called classics or Greek and Roman studies, is now also being taught in prison, and the pedagogies used in prison settings are being discussed in scholarly conferences. The recent publication has also collected them. Engaging with ancient Egypt in prison as instructor makes sure they engage with it in a safe and stimulating a learning environment where the incarcerated students are reminded and reassured that even behind bars they can contribute to humanity, could be one of the new frontiers of our discipline. In his book, Teaching to Transgress, Bell Hooks wrote, "The classroom, with all its limitations, remains a location of possibility in which we have the opportunity to labor for freedom, to face reality, even if we collectively imagine ways to move beyond boundaries, to transgress. This is education as the practice of freedom." I think these words are today in the US even more important than ever. And so to let incarcerated students move beyond the physical boundaries of the prison setting and be transported in a world ruled by Maat, what is right in ancient Egypt, is probably the minimum contribution we could make as scholars, as Egyptologists, as lovers of ancient Egypt, and as humans lucky enough to live outside those bars. And I like to conclude with a quote from another student of mine who enrolled in the course twice, since he said there will always be something new to learn about Egypt. Mark is his name, and he wrote an essay that hopefully will be published in the San Quentin News, one of the San Quentin News magazine, about the course of Egyptology in San Quentin. And here are his conclusive remarks, which I found very sound. At UC Berkeley, I know that Professor Lucarelli teaches large undergraduate courses in classrooms that can seat hundreds of students. It shows how popular is ancient Egypt and the desire to learn about it among the new generations. I'm grateful to Mount Tamalpais College for providing that same opportunity to learn to us and bringing Egyptology to students who cannot join Professor Lucarelli's courses at UC Berkeley. While higher education programs in prisons are still volunteer-based, actually in his original version that then we were reworking, he say, well, the volunteer basis system is a flaw. We wish that for the future a higher number of college faculty such as Professor Lucarelli could be employed to teach in prison. If taxpayer funds to the University of California and Cal State could be actually employed for higher education in prisons, I believe such a wish could become reality. So I want to leave you with this reflection from one of the students, and if you're interested to learn more or to donate to the program, it's still a program that really works mostly, actually only on donations. Please get in touch with me, or you're all welcome to volunteer. You don't need to be a professor actually, or UC Berkeley professor to, but if you think you want to share any kind of knowledge, you can apply for the program, see what they are offering every semester, and see if you can work as instructor, TA, or study hall tutor. So there are many possibilities to help our students in San Quentin. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. If you have a question, please say it loudly for the purpose of the camera, the recording.
Oh, yeah. I can do this.
And we have a microphone. Do we have any questions? I'll start out with one. My question actually might be for Gerald, and thank you very much for joining us today. If you are a San Quentin inmate, is it difficult to access the classes at Mount Tamalpais College? Do you have to have a good record, or is it competitive, or is it, because I understand it's capped and they can't take everyone who wants to be in it?
Limited space as far as some of the classes that are more popular and things like that, but overall, if a student really wants to apply himself and actually get within a class, all he has to do is basically just make that effort. That's it. And like I said, one of the things about the education program at San Quentin is it's respected by everybody. Anybody that's applied themselves to an education, it seems like the general population of the prison respects that. And it's like a wide berth for anybody that wants to go into the education building. And the teachers respect you. It's not like anybody's looking down their nose at you. Some of the guards don't like the idea. I've heard some of the guards say, we're getting a better education than they have.
Would it be true?
And that's a good thing, because if they're rehabilitating these individuals, give them what they need to return back into society and be something that's welcomed and needed, So the quality education goes a long way to a person's, overall character.
I remember you have to have at least a high school diploma. I think there are some rules like to enroll in the program, you have to have a high school diploma at least. So that already excludes. Yeah, I think that excludes some. I know for some courses they have wait list sometimes, but in fact they're really inclusive and really happy to take as many students as they can. Of course, it depends also how many rooms there are and instructors. It's a lot of efforts for the staff also to be able to organize it.
Are there any other questions? Because I don't want to monopolize it, but I have a million because I used to work in higher education and was always animated around the idea of democratizing access to a high quality education. Doug, question.
Did any of your students express an interest in any of the other concepts from ancient Egyptian religion besides just Maat? For instance, the duality that is just, is such a theme through all of ancient Egyptian history. Everything comes in pairs. Were any of them interested in that part of it?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, Maat, I thought it was really for my interest also in reception and how it connect their world to the world of ancient Egypt, and ethics was one of the prominent, but they were basically interested in any aspect of the Egyptian life and religion. And so not only the religion, but also the environment, the geography, the concept of duality, we discuss it a lot, but also daily life. And so one of the my efforts were to also let them understand the ancient Egyptians weren't all queens and kings. There were normal people who lived like us with the same fears, the same wishes, the same expectations. And so we talk a lot about also daily life in ancient Egypt and the writings, the system of writings. They were, but I don't think, Beatrice, do you remember any topic that they weren't interested?
No, absolutely. In fact, it was hard to stay on topic because as they had so many questions, tangent, I mean, they were able to connect like so many topics to one, the
Yeah.
topic of the day. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really great.
Amy?
So at this time, if you're a San Quentin resident, you can't access the web, you can't go researching on your own, right?
Let's see, in 2020, I believe it was in 2021, they actually started giving us tablets. Other than that, the tablets was just basics, nothing else. Phones, internet, all that, no. If it was something that you wanted found on the internet, you could have somebody, or one of the teachers, download topics and stuff that you might want further answers to and things like that. But as far as technology, no. That was something that they considered to be security. So.
Yeah, the news now, Gerard, you're not there anymore, but the news is that now they create, because they have laptops, not just tablets, they have laptops, and they can access some canvas for courses where we can upload some teaching material, and they have also some repository where to do research, something like a sort of restricted Google just for research topics. And that's great. I mean, for them it's really, and so there is a computer lab where I was volunteering as well. Yeah.
So they have Canvas, which is a course management
Yeah.
system that is used at many universities and
Yeah,
colleges.
so this is new. This is
Okay.
like
Well,
this year.
Something, okay.
This is more of a comment. I was lucky enough to go with somebody who works at San Quentin, just to go to the outside museum part that you can access. But while I was there were some stacks of the San Quentin News, and I got the last 4 issues. I guess it's issued every other month. Is that right? Something like that? Monthly.
Monthly.
Anyway, I was really impressed and I really enjoyed it. And I was going to ask you if there was going to be an article there
Yeah.
or if there were, but sounds like it's already taken care of.
Yeah, so indeed, only incarcerated people write in that, so I cannot write the article, but one of my students indeed was working, and that's the quotation that I show you. And they have San Quentin News is the newspaper, and then they have Wall City, which is a magazine that's every quarterly, and that with more high quality papers, color photos. And by the way, you can become a donor for San Quentin News. I receive the newspaper magazine at home with just $25 a quarter or something, like very cheap, and so it's still supporting journalists. The journalists there, they're really talented. Well, I don't know, Bill, if you want to say anything about. I mean, he's one of the main initiators and supporters of San Quentin News.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I first got involved in 2012. I taught an introductory journalism class in a program that was then called the Prison University Project, PUP. It later got accredited on its own and it became San Quentin. It became what it is now. And I actually have Mount Tamalpais sweatshirt. But the idea of teaching that class came to me from a former student at Berkeley who was on the faculty, is on the faculty at UC Merced. His name is Nigel Hatton. And Nigel was involved with teaching in PUP, and he asked me if I wanted to co-teach this class. So I didn't have anything going that summer, so I said, fine. As it turned out, Nigel got a grant and he went off to Denmark, so I had to teach the class by myself. And I had 15 students enrolled and 5 auditors, and it was, as everybody has said, it's just a revelation when you're in a classroom with people where you have their undivided attention, as opposed to, hey, let's face it, there are lots of other things going on in these kids' minds who are at Berkeley, and there is no limit. They want to know everything, and they want to know it at once. And the other thing I should point out is that they're incredibly respectful, not just to me, but to each other. And these are some pretty tough customers now. They are not in there for overtime parking. And they're racially mixed. It's the most racially mixed environment in the United States, but everybody had his say, even if they disagreed. And I got involved because I was asked by one of my former students, a guy named Juan Haynes, who incidentally is still there, if I wanted to be involved with the newspaper, and I said sure. And that opened up the door to this. I'll just say one other thing. We closed down our editing program at the School of Journalism at roughly that same time. We stopped teaching editing. We stopped teaching. So when they asked me if I wanted to get involved, I said, yeah, I could do that, but I'd just be like one person coming in there. So why don't we do this? I'll get students from this journalism school, and I'll enroll them in an editing course, and we'll go over and we'll edit the San Quentin News. So we've been doing that ever since 2012, only it's expanded way beyond that. It's crazy. I won't bore you with all the details, but now it's kind of spawned a whole journalism in prison movement, and they have a women's version that's being published by the women down at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. It's called Paper Trail. Very, very interesting. And they published this insert. It's inserted into the San Quentin News and distributed. And they have another newspaper that's published at a prison up in the Gold Country called Mule Creek Prison. Same deal. It's inserted. And now, imminently, I think within a very short time, they're going to have a prison newspaper at Pelican Bay, which is up in Crescent City, and it's going to be called the Pelican. And that's another very, very hardcore, rigid prison. So we'll see how that works. But in the 12 years I've been working there, it's really caught on. A lot of people think that it has a useful place in the whole spectrum of rehabilitation tools that they use. And it's relatively low cost, and it makes them feel good about themselves.
And in terms of safety, indeed, I must say I never felt as safe as there. And you know, a lot of people, when I say I'm teaching in prison, starting from my mom, I was like, is there a guard in the classroom? No, we don't. No, we don't want any guard. I mean, it's super safe. And so, you know, there is this idea that you're in the middle of unsafe space. No, and I would say, I mean, we are still recording, right? But paradoxically, I think right now there is more freedom to teach in prison than outside, almost, I must say. It's kind of crazy. And I think Gerald also wants to talk.
You were actually safer than you would be in the district. That's how much you studied every student in the class.
Yeah. And it's also nice, every time I leave the classroom, the students tell me, drive safe, be safe outside. You know, it's like.
Could I say one other thing? About a year ago, the Wall Street Journal published a story. Wall Street Journal published a story by a contributor, a woman who is a professor at an Eastern school, I can't remember. It's in New York, and she volunteers teaching a class at one of the many prisons in New York. And she published this story, which I thought was brilliant. She said, based on her experience there, that we should teach college the way it's taught in prison. And she's absolutely right. And she made these comparisons, some of which I just pointed out, that you have their absolute attention. And they're so happy to see you because the rest of their week is spent, you know, with other prisoners or staff. So you're somebody from the outside world. And the fact that you took your time to come there and spend with them, they're enormously grateful. And there are no distractions. And I don't care how much time you spend with them, there's never enough. They've got more questions, and they just are like sponges. As opposed to, hey, let's be realistic. There's a lot of resistance. You teach classes at Berkeley. They mean well, but they just have, like I said, they have a lot of other things going on in their lives. The people at San Quentin don't.
Right. And I think, I mean, what Beatrice say, it's good for the students to be exposed to higher education in prison because they realize that it's indeed a privilege. And so you see people who are really aware that it's a privilege, and you are reminded, because I think, you know, you can give it for granted when you're outside and you have access to a very good university like UC Berkeley. I mean, I hope very good universities. and you don't realize how lucky you are, right? So there will
What was
be
the
really.
name of the woman who wrote the article?
You know, I will find it. I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I'll look it up. I'll send it to Rita, and she can distribute it to you.
Great.
But it's
I'd like
fascinating.
that.
Fascinating.
Thank you. Well, we've heard people talk about education being a privilege. There is, however, the view, and it's espoused by many people who are involved in, education in prisons, that education is in fact a right, and that there is evolving case law in California and other states that towards securing educational opportunities for people in the justice system. So I don't know as much about it as some others, but I just want to put it out there that if we abrogate those rights at our peril, because the wall between the prison and not prison, it isn't absolute. It's porous. There's so I would be eager to have more resources to learn about that. Are there any more questions from? Well, I would like to thank everybody for a fabulous talk today. I would thank
Thank you.
Professor Rita Lucarelli and
Thank
William
you to our
and
guest.
Gerald.
Yeah, I wish to thank Gerald, Beatrice, and Bill also for being here. Indeed, this is not something, it's not those kind of projects as an academic that you can do on your own. You really need collaboration, you need the community, you need mutual understanding, and I'm very happy I found all that, and now San Quentin is like a second family in a sense. I even have a brown card, so an ID I can go in and out anytime, which is is a great sign of trust indeed in what I do there. Okay, thank you so much.